Greetings nerdy list aficionados and welcome back to Top 10 Nerd. Today we're going to be looking into the realm of vampires, today vampire villains. Sure, heroes have found themselves transformed into creatures of the night, but there are some villains who are out for blood. Be they transformed rogues or just always lurking out there in the darkness, we're going to be taking a look at some of them here on Top 10 Nerd. I'm Sasha and these are the top 10 scary vampire villains. Let's get started. Number 10. Nocturna. Nocturna first debuted in Batman number 363 in 1983, was fulfilling the role of temptress, villain love interest for Batman. He's had a couple of those. Her plots were interesting, including trying to get custody of Jason Todd. Pre-crisis Jason Todd, so like Dick Grayson clone Todd, not post-crisis. In fact, she would vanish post-crisis for a little bit until the 90s, where she would reappear in Robin, at that point Tim Drake's comic. But her most villainous turn would be in the New 52, where she would transition over to being a villain for Batwoman, and she would essentially rape her and use her vampiric abilities to force her into being in a relationship with her. Which went over poorly, not only because it was squicky for some readers, but because it came on the heels of the unceremonious breakup between Batwoman and her fiancée Maggie. This was because Dan Didio vetoed the marriage plot that the writing team had been building up to for a whole year, so they quit. Nocturna was actually supposed to appear on the Batman animated series back in the 90s. They even had a character design and everything. But she was scrapped because vampirism was too graphic and sexual for the censors at the time. Number 9. Baron Blood. With a name like that, you had better embrace being a vampire. There have been several Baron Bloods throughout Marvel's history. Unfortunately, not all of them have been vampires. But the one we want, who has existed and featured in the stories of all of the others as well, is the OG vampire himself, John Falsworth. He first debuted in Invaders number 7 back in 1976. Baron Blood has all your classic vampire abilities, he was stacked, but he would modify himself over time, such as through some experiments by the Nazis that allowed him to walk in daylight but also took away his ability to shapeshift, trade-off. Baron Blood has tangled the most with Captain America, but has also taken his turn with other Marvel heroes. But there's just something so fun about seeing Cap fight a vampire, especially the time he was turned into one. Number 8. Bloody Mary. Bloody Mary is unique on our list because she is a different kind of vampire. Despite what her name suggests, she is an energy vampire and one of the female Furies. She first debuted in Hawk and Dove Volume 2 number 21 back in 1991. She could absorb energy from her victims, after which point she would be able to take control of them. Her appearance, however, was short-lived and she was killed by the Infinity Man and hasn't been around much since. A sentence that only makes sense in either the comic book or sci-fi world, sometimes fantasy too. They got better. Number 7. Lilith. She first debuted in giant-sized chillers featuring The Curse of Dracula number 1 in 1974, and that is quite the mouthful. She was part of Marvel's big supernatural push after the ban on supernatural creatures placed on comics by the Comics Code Authority was lifted. Lilith is the daughter of Dracula, who Marvel was also quick to claim as a character for stories. And of course, as a big bad. Lilith was not a conventional vampire, as she had been cursed to be one, and as a result, she was also lacking some of the conventional weaknesses, such as a fear of holy symbols or dying in sunlight. She also didn't have to sleep in a coffin lined with one's own earth. She was destined to walk the earth trying to kill her father, but also because of how the curse worked, she couldn't actually do that. And every time she died, she would be reborn in the body of a woman who also wanted Dracula dead. Despite being opposed to Dracula, Lilith also wreaks a lot of havoc on the earth itself, and so she finds herself clashing with Marvel's heroes, especially Blade. Number 6. Count Sivana. Sivana is not a vampire in the main verse. Instead, he is a mad scientist and foe of Captain Marvel, who opposed the Marvel family with his own Sivana family. But on Earth 43, he was a vampire, part of the Legion of Sivanas, who had one goal: to take over the multiverse. Because, why not? Spread your vampirism across it. And how is this not the dark multiverse? Well, simple, that didn't exist yet. Number 5. Captain America. Let's have some more fun in the realm of alternate universes. The Exiles was a series that featured characters torn out of their time and their home dimensions, hopping across other dimensions in the multiverse. On one of these Earths, they met a Captain America who had been bitten by Baron Blood and turned into a vampire, at which point he went full evil. He would later turn the Avengers and make them his personal slaves. Sometimes evil Cap can be fun Cap, as long as it's not Hail Hydra Cap, although some people like that cap. Number 4. Deacon Frost. Now Deacon looks very different in his comic to movie adaptation appearance. Movie, kinda hot, maybe, vampire edgelord. Comics, middle-aged with a cowboy hat, sometimes, depends, you'll figure it out. He first appeared in the Tomb of Dracula number 13 back in 1973. Now he became a vampire accidentally when the vial of vampire blood he was planning on injecting into his experiment/victim accidentally went into his own arm instead. But because it wasn't a traditional transformation, you guessed it, he gained some special abilities. He was able to create a doppelganger, multiple actually, and by biting them, they would be under his control. Frost is important because he is the vampire responsible for killing Blade's mom, setting Blade on the path of becoming a vampire slayer. Thanks to the doppelgangers, even after his death, he was able to reappear to torment Blade for a little longer. Number 3. Morbius. Morbius the living vampire. He gets to be 3 because when he's bad, he's very, very bad, but lots of times he's also good or skirting into anti-hero territory. Now Morbius is technically a pseudo-vampire, meaning he didn't become a vampire supernaturally. Instead, he was created by science. Vampire bat blood and electroshock, all in a bid to cure his rare blood disease. Morbius first debuted in The Amazing Spider-Man number 101 back in 1971, and was also one of those characters created to take advantage of the new supernatural creatures ban being lifted. He would struggle to find his footing though, floating around until the 90s, but he gained enough recognizability to make it into the animated series and eventually get his own movie adaptation. Come on, Blade, team up. We'll see what the future holds. Number 2. The Joker. The Joker has become a vampire multiple times, and each has been pretty memorable, even though the first that many may jump straight to is him trying to become a vampire. And this is from the very well-known graphic novel series where Batman becomes a vampire himself. The Joker would end up tormenting Batman and becoming a leader of vampires until Bruce snapped and fed from him. And then he had to kill him because he wanted to prevent him from turning, because no one wanted that. The Joker fully turned into a vampire in the Batman movie, The Batman vs. Dracula. He was turned by Dracula. And Bruce kept him in the cave and fed him his blood while he looked for a cure. It was all kind of intimate. That movie is far better than it has any right to be. It's pretty cool. The Batman doesn't get as much cred as it deserves sometimes. Also, Convergence. He was a vampire there. This is a concept some like to dabble in, but not all need to stay there because let's be real, the Joker is pretty scary as is. And finally, in at number 1, Dracula. Dracula first debuted in the Tomb of Dracula number 1 in 1972. So yes, after Morbius. This is because Stan Lee actually didn't want to dive straight into Dracula, but when Morbius didn't quite explode out of the gate, they ended up implementing him. Dracula gets to be number 1, not just because of his literary pedigree, but because he created many of the problems and characters the Marvel heroes must now face. For example, he's the one who turned Baron Blood. For a time, Doctor Strange would banish all the vampires, but they would reappear years later. Dracula is the most powerful of all the vampires and is as conventional as they come. One of his most recent claims to fame is getting into it with Deadpool over the demoness Shikla, whom he wanted to marry. He also has a much different appearance these days, far more white-haired with a ponytail. So those were 10 scary vampire villains. Did I miss any of your faves? Let me know down below, and thanks so much for watching Top 10 Nerd. Please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and hit that bell notification so that you never miss a vid. And we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.